On a cold November morning in 2025, the manufacturing plant in rural Minnesota came alive the way it always did, fluorescent lights buzzing awake, steel machines humming into rhythm, workers clocking in with coffee cups and quiet nods. For most people inside that building, it was just another shift. For Amber Czech, it would be her last. She was only 20 years old, young enough that her work boots were still stiff, young enough that her life still felt like it was just beginning to take shape. To her family, Amber was reliable, determined, and hopeful. To her co-workers, she was quiet but kind, someone who did her job and kept to herself. No one walking past her that morning could have imagined what investigators would later describe as one of the most brutal acts of workplace violence Minnesota had seen in years. Because somewhere inside that factory, amid the noise, the schedules, and the ordinary routine, violence was already waiting. A normal day. Until it wasn't. The plant was large, industrial, and loud. Conversations were often reduced to hand signals and glances. Tools were stored where they had always been. Heavy equipment sat in plain sight, necessary, ordinary, and trusted. Including a sledgehammer. According to investigators, at some point during the shift, Amber encountered a coworker. What was said, if anything, has never been fully confirmed. There was no public record of a heated argument. No alarm raised. No immediate warning signs that anything was about to go wrong. Then, suddenly, the routine shattered. Police would later say Amber was attacked with a sledgehammer, a tool designed for force, not restraint. The attack was swift. Violent. Unrelenting. There were no warning screams heard in time. No chance for her to run. No opportunity for anyone nearby to stop it. By the time co-workers realized something was wrong, it was already too late. When supervisors were alerted and emergency services were called, the factory floor transformed into a crime scene. Machines were shut down. Workers were ushered out, some in shock, others in tears. Amber Czech was pronounced dead at the scene. She had gone to work expecting an ordinary day. Instead, she became the victim of a crime so unexpected and savage that it sent shockwaves far beyond the walls of that plant. Word spread quickly, then came the headlines. A young woman. A workplace killing. A sledgehammer. The brutality alone was enough to make national news, but the questions made it unforgettable. Authorities confirmed that the suspect was a coworker, someone Amber had seen before, someone who knew the building, the tools, the routines. That fact alone unsettled people across the country. Because it meant this wasn't a random intruder. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't a crime of opportunity. It happened inside a place meant to be safe. Investigators were careful with their words. They described the attack as isolated, emphasizing there was no ongoing threat to the public. But they offered few details about motive. And that silence fueled fear. Was it a sudden emotional break, a long-simmering grievance no one noticed, a mental health crisis hidden in plain sight? Or something darker? As the investigation continued, one unsettling truth emerged. There were no prior reports of conflict serious enough to predict this outcome. No documented threats. No public disciplinary records. No clear warning signs that management, or Amber herself, had been aware of. For many viewers following the case, this became the most terrifying part. Because it suggested something far more disturbing than a simple argument gone wrong. It suggested that violence can erupt without warning, even in structured environments designed for safety and oversight. The killer didn't break in. Didn't flee from outside. Didn't hide a weapon. The weapon was already there, the access was already granted, the trust already existed. While the nation debated workplace safety and warning signs, Amber's family faced a different reality. There would be no more phone calls from her on break. No stories about coworkers. No plans for the future she was just beginning to imagine. 20 years old, gone in a moment of violence she never saw coming. In statements released through authorities, her family described a young woman full of life, someone who worked hard, cared deeply, and deserved so much more than the ending she was given. Amber Czech's death forced uncomfortable conversations across America. About workplace violence, about mental health support, about how easily tools of labor can become weapons, and about how safety protocols often fail to account for the unpredictable nature of human behavior. Factories reviewed procedures, companies re-examined security, workers everywhere looked differently at the places they clocked into every day. Because if it could happen there, it could happen anywhere. This was not a crime driven by greed, not a crime of passion witnessed by many, not a tragedy that came with obvious warnings. It was quiet, sudden, and devastating. Amber Czech went to work expecting a paycheck and a future. Instead, she became a name remembered for how fragile safety can be, and how quickly normal life can collapse. And as the legal process continues, one truth remains painfully clear. Sometimes, the most terrifying crimes aren't committed in dark alleys, but under bright lights, during ordinary shifts, by people we think we know.